everyone. So for my today's presentation, I thought I'd go through sort of who we are as a company and what we've done. But then I wanted to sort of do a sort of a profiling exercise where, as a room and as a presentation, we'll get down into a real Kenyan family. We'll try and establish what middle income or lower middle income is, and then we'll try and establish what they can actually afford to buy. And the idea is really to encourage any developers in the room to seriously consider the sector. And then I'll go on, and if we have time, and just share some of our experiences as a company, what we've learnt over the last few years. So I'm not sure how this clicker works, but... Oh, the green one, okay. There you go. Okay, so Karibu Homes is a company that was formed in 2012 as a business, but the concept started way before. And really, we've come about purely to try and produce a housing product that can make a profit, so it's commercially viable, as low down the income ladder as we can get to. We're very customer-centric. So while at this conference we've been talking a lot about building houses, I think we often don't bring up the customer, and really that's who we're serving at the end of the day. So that's very important to us. That's a bit of a timeline. So we conceptualized this business in 2009. We completed a viable business plan in 2011 and established funding. We purchased land in 2012 and we started construction. We've finished the first 3 phases actually, and we've sold more than 50% of our houses to Kenyan families earning 100,000 shillings or less. And now we're scaling up. We have a further 20 acres in Kiambu, where we're doing a further 1,300 houses. And our price points start now, as at today, from about $20,000 or 2 million shillings, up to about $60,000 or 6 million shillings. So we have an entire range of price points. So what I wanted to do here is just an exercise to try and establish exactly who we're talking about when it comes to the housing gap. Who are the underserved? So what is affordability? What is low income? Who are the underserved? And what is this pricing sweet spot that we should try and get to? So, I mean, we can make this interactive. So how many urban Kenyans do you think currently rent a property? And I just want to caveat something here. My data has come from one source. So often you'll find a data source that swings around, but we're generally in the ballpark, I think. Anyone? That's one statistic, but what I found from the Kenya National Housing Survey of 2015, it's 80%. So that means that only that 20% of all the 80% of all the land in Nairobi is owned by 20% of the people, which is a very huge imbalance. The next question. Let's call it Mr. and Mrs. Nairobi. What do you think Mr. and Mrs. Nairobi need to earn to be deemed as middle income? Anyone? Okay, the middle income range, according to the Institute of Economic Affairs, is between 76,000 and 102,000 shillings a month. So I want to talk more about the middle income bracket, because honestly, if we go below the sort of 60,000 mark, we're not going to find a private sector product that would make a profit. That's really social housing. So let's take a family at 100,000, because let's take it as a husband and wife, earning roughly 50,000 each. That's a family income, and you've got your 100,000 mark. So what do you think their average rent is currently? Because they're obviously renting, since 80% are renting, in the Nairobi CBD area. What do you think a family earning 100,000 shillings rents for? 30? Yeah? Okay, it's again, the Kenya National Survey of Housing, so it's referenced. It's about 35,000 to 40,000 shillings per month. And that's normally in a home that's valued much higher. So, probably up to 10 million range, that kind of thing. Which also tells you why the rental returns can be quite appalling when it comes to property in Nairobi generally. Because people can't afford to match a higher rent for the value of the property that people are selling. So next question. So what can a family earning 100,000 shilling net afford to pay for a home on a mortgage? Let's say 14%, 15 years. What do you think the value of a home they could buy? This is now the sweet spot of what we should be producing for a truly middle-income family. Anyone? Sorry? 1.2 million shillings, $12,000, okay. Anyone else? 20,000? Okay, close. So let's assume that 33% of your income goes to housing. The mortgage rate is 14%, the term loan is 15 years. They should be paying 33,000 shillings a month. Now I punched this through a mortgage calculator and the figure came out at 2.5 million shillings, right? So that's the kind of sweet spot for a middle-income family in the sort of urban Kenya. There's very little stock coming on the market at that. So their sort of incentive to buy a house and move out is not going to happen unless there's actually a house at that value. And when the interest rate cap gets lifted, what happens? It's their biggest fear, right? Interest rate goes up by 5%, that 33,000 suddenly becomes 45, and then it's unviable. And so you've got to understand the story of this Mr. and Mrs. Nairobi family. Next question. What do you think the closing costs are as a percentage of the value of the home in Kenya? Now, the reason I'm asking this is because in order to buy that 2.5 million shilling home, they probably have to muster together a 10% deposit. Then they have to pay their legal fees, and they have to have money together for the closing costs. So apart from the deposit for the home, can anyone guess as a percentage what the closing cost is for buying a house in Nairobi or in Kenya? Anyone? Sorry? 20%? Okay, oh God, I hope not. Anyone else? 5%? Okay, it's about 10.5%, and this is broken down through Law Society legal fees at 2%, government valuation fees, stamp duty, commissions, could be swinging here and there, land registration costs, and what we call hidden costs. So you're coming to 10%. I mean, that means this family has to have 250,000 shillings on their income of 100 just to think about transacting. It's possibly amongst the highest on the globe. So there's quite a sort of shocking, kind of revelation. So Mr. and Mrs. Nairobi earning 100,000 sounds pretty comfortable, but for them to jump out of a rental situation into a home ownership situation under a mortgage is actually not that easy to do. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Feel free, just put your hand up. I'll try and make it as interactive as possible. So the next point is, what opportunities and incentives would attract the housing sector? So given the story we've just talked about, there are a couple of nice opportunities that are happening, and one of them is the Kenyan Mortgage Refinance Company. I don't know, is anyone here from KMRC? Okay, well, that's a very good initiative. I mean, what they've said is they're going to give subsidized funding through the World Bank. The rules, or let's say the constraints are a family income of 150,000, but they're not clear if this is net or gross. Interest rate is to be fixed. The World Bank tells me it could be single digit, but the banks are still a little bit shy to tell me what the number is. Maximum value of a home in Nairobi, 4 million shillings, and the deposit is 10%, so they want skin in the game. The other big thing is the digitization of the lands office. As a company, we currently have about 14 mortgages which are stuck in the lands office. That's $1 million worth of cash I can't even get hold of because of delays in literally just processing the ownership documents. And aside from that, that's 14 families who have relocated, moved their kids from school, probably living at their in-laws. Their whole world has been turned upside down for 6 months purely because we can't get their documents registered. There's lots of private sector stuff we can do, which is doing away with legal scale fees. That 2% is a huge amount. Make it lower, make it fixed. Things like the joint building council contracts, which is more on the construction side, but that leans heavily towards away from the developer and more towards the contractor, and makes litigation and all sorts of things very, very apparent. Government incentives, I don't want to go on too much about it, but you've got stamp duty relief on first-time homeowners, which, by the way, yesterday the PS did say that he's done that, so I immediately called my lawyer And she immediately sent me back a thing saying it's only for the projects under the affordable housing scheme. So when he comes today, that's one of the questions I'd love to ask him. Yeah, zero rated VAT, obviously game changer. 16% off the bottom line, or in some cases on top of it. And finding creative ways of servicing land, like myself, and I've seen a couple of other developers here, we've just bought service plots in Kiambu. It's brilliant. I mean, you just plug and play. You turn up, start building, you've got your water, your power. It just takes a massive headache off. So in terms of Karibu Homes, what we offer in general is an unrivaled price and quality crossover. So we're really proud of our communities. We provide real value for money. We're very customer centric. So just because you're buying a home for 3 million shillings, it's the same sort of emotion as buying a home for 30 million shillings. It's for everyone, whatever you're buying, when you're buying a home, it's affordable. We really walk them through the process, and it's quite a kind of hands-on thing. We've developed a track record now. In Athi River, we have 600 houses built, another 400 at foundation stage, and most of them are priced below the 4 million mark, which is the sweet spot for KMRC. And we're also inviting, and we're innovating as well, but we're inviting people to talk about tenant purchase schemes with us. We've really realized until the mortgage market and the relationship between a normal Kenyan and the trust with a bank is resolved, mortgages aren't going to fly out the door. Yeah? We've done so many surveys and focus groups, and the resounding return is we don't trust the bank, because they all remember the day their dad had a mortgage at 10% and it went up to 20. And it's etched in everyone's memory. So until there's that trust, it's going to be difficult to kind of unlock that. But I'm very excited about KMRC if they can pull this off. Just for developers who haven't embarked on affordable housing, we've actually released a case study to the public under the Center for Affordable Housing. KCA Russ did it for us. So we've kind of given our IP to the, open sourced our IP in terms of construction, but most importantly, she focused on the customer. And just what we learned through our focus groups and delivering our first phases is that families don't want to live vertically. Yeah, community is really an important key element. Security is on everyone's mind, whether you're the president all the way down to someone living in Kibera. It's a big concern. So gated community security, children's welfare, all that sort of stuff you have to bring in. Water, reliable services is also a big thing. And having community-led facilities, so green park areas. An average Kenyan family is always going to have a visitor coming down during school holidays, or a grandparent is going to be selling vegetables. It doesn't matter what, this is middle income. So your shosho is going to be doing a bit of biashara on the side. So you need to provide these sort of elements in there, don't block them. It's a very cultural nuance. When looking for a location, again, it's, I think everyone's heard this time and time again, but you can't put an affordable housing project far away from the CBD because transportation is a killer. Just think about how Kibera functions so well. I mean, it's bang in the middle of town, nearest the best schools. If you live in Kibera and you have to get relocated to Thika for a year, and you've got 2 young children, there'll be 5 grandmothers to look after those kids. Yeah. So Kibera as a community functions beautifully, and you've got to kind of take those elements of why it functions into your community design. So service land is obviously important. And another thing we also learned, and we used a landscape architect to do our master planning. And in Kenya you can grow anything really fast. And just the impact of so let me go step back a step. When you look at a place like Kibera, there's a massive lack of civic sense. So you're going to look after the inside of your house, but generally not the outside. So when you're doing a high density, low to mid income type of community, it's important to kind of, we can't spend a lot of money on fancy tennis courts and swimming pools, but you can spend on greenery and making the place a little bit more amenable. So once you walk outside, you're proud of where you are, and those things shouldn't cost too much money. Large scale developers. So we did a lot of work around value engineering, consultants tend to overspecify, so you need to really work hard on your designs. Unless you're a builder contractor yourself, if you're a pure developer that's outsourcing construction, you really do need to look at that design element and really outsource as much as you can for somebody to do a review of the design. We were just speaking about that earlier. Again, softscape I've mentioned, and really these are the sort of common areas which we learned the hard way, I suppose, that really makes a community work. Now, the houses you see in these pictures on the left is our enhanced unit, which is a fully finished unit, meaning it's tiled, it's got fitted cupboards, and the price range for a 2-bed is about 4 million, and for an enhanced 3-bed it goes up to 6 million. And on the right-hand side, the yellow buildings, those are our standard units. So what we did was, to create a lower price point, we thought about what do Kenyans normally do? I mean, we tend to build incrementally. So, people like to do that. So we put that incremental element in by simply not tiling the main areas. Bathrooms and kitchens are tiled, and not putting in fitted cupboards. And so from day one, somebody can move into the house, and a couple of weeks later or a year or two later, everyone has a fundi or a guy, and then they finish up the house themselves. And that allows us to bring the price point down. So that's kind of how we manage a cross-subsidy, which is, it's one of the only ways you can actually deliver a good return and allow for affordability, is by having a greater community. So that's the presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it. Any questions?
So really, it buttresses my point that affordable housing is within that bracket. My bracket is around the $35,000 mark. But what is missing really is the size of your units. You did talk about the units that you do are fully finished with cupboards.
Yeah.
And then you spoke about the one that is more or less semi-finished, which works perfectly well in Africa. Because families will have extra earnings as time goes on, and they will finish it one day. But what is missing in your presentation really is what are your general sizes of these units?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just go back a click. So our standard 2-bedroom unit is 50 square meters. It has 1 bathroom. Our standard 3-bedroom unit is 75 square meters with 1 bathroom, with 3 beds. The enhanced 2-bedroom is 60 square meters, and the enhanced 3-bedroom is 90. So it's decent sizes, So we also have a 1-bed product, which was our proof of concept. That product was on the market when we launched at $14,000. Of course, we only made about 20 of them out of the entire master plan. And those were 30 square meters, right? And it's not a bed sit. It has a separate bedroom. Just the kitchen is open plan. I mean, I lived in a flat in London that was that size, so it's fine. I hope that answers your question. Anyone else?
Thank you for your presentation. Now, your concept presupposes that your uptakers have regular income, at least from what I see. Have you dared to think about the informal groups whose incomes are erratic and how they can be accommodated in these affordable housing agenda?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't got my data slides here, but 70% of our purchases happen in cash or installment, and only 30% on mortgage, right? And that 30% of mortgage buyers, about 70% of them are either government workers or bank workers. Now, in my 70% of cash buyers and installment buyers, the income range is between 45,000 shillings to upwards, and we have plenty of guys who have to. So we have to do our own credit rating. So we've got plenty of people that we do their credit check on their M-Pesa account, and I can tell you we've got 0 default across those installment payments. If someone wants a bit of a break or a holiday, we can do it, but generally everyone pays. The only time we've had to refund people is when something really terrible happens, like a bad car accident. So like with microfinance, the default rate is quite small. And, it's a family affair. You're buying a house. So, when the husband is not producing the money to pay that installment, the wife is going to be on him before, yeah? So generally, our track record in terms of just the track record of payments is pretty good. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thanks. Very deep thinking to produce the kind of product that we have seen. But I've got two questions for you. The present occupants, are you the ones who are managing the site, or the development? And number two, how are the social interactions, that exist there? Thank you.
Yeah, good question. So, yes, we do. Until we sell the last unit, Karibu Homes will manage the product manage the community because our brand is obviously exposed. And we do two things. They're all in the report, so it's no secret. We ask for service charge to be paid 1 year up front at the point of purchase. So my management company is always fully funded, and which means we can manage the community well. And for 1 year, a new buyer is not stressed about paying the service charge. And that creates a sort of cash flow element and an easy to manage. In terms of the community, we've got WhatsApp groups for churches. We've got WhatsApp groups that organize children's weekend activities, bus pickups. I think the residents recently mentioned to me they formed a sacco and they bought a matatu. Because they're now 980 people living there, 150 children aged under 10. So the community just basically, it really is, it's connected, They all have, they have a group also for trading, business, amongst themselves. And I'm party to all these WhatsApp groups as a kind of, fly on the wall. It's always very interesting.